Good morning. It's another Tuesday, another Mission Tuesday. And we are coming to the end of Deuteronomy chapter 5. I've been suggesting to you that ground zero for missions is the family. And ground zero for the family are the Ten Commandments. And we've come to the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. We come to the end of that passage at the end of chapter 5. And talking about obedience this morning, because God was talking about obedience to the people of Israel and is about to dispatch Moses to pass on the teachings and the statutes of the Ten Commandments to the people. One experience I had that taught me a lesson in obedience was when I was maybe 10 years old. And I had some friends over to the house, and we were playing. My father was a postmaster, and he was a postmaster in the post office that was right beside our house. So he was nearby, but far enough away that I could sometimes get into trouble with my friends. And on this occasion, one of the things we loved to do was to throw rocks, see who could throw the farthest. But sometimes the rocks would find their way to the wrong place. And that's what happened on this day, because I threw a rock that found its way right through a window in the backyard, in the back of our house. Now, my father had an uncanny ability to spot something like that had gone wrong, whether it was a ding in the car or a broken window. And so on his lunch break, he noticed that a window had been broken. And he drew all of the usual suspects together. He had us all stand in a line in front of him. And he explained that a window had been broken, and he wanted to know who did it. Now, he promised us that there would be no punishment, that he just wanted to know the truth. And so he gathered us all together, and he asked who it was that did it. Well, I processed everything he said, and I realized, well, if there's no punishment, I got nothing to fear, so I may as well fess up. I didn't at first, but eventually, when he made that promise that there would be no punishment, I said, okay, Dad, it was me. And I could tell by the look on his face, he was a combination of angry and embarrassed that it was his kid that did it. And so he turned on a dime away from his promise, and he sent all of my friends home. He sent me to my room, and I think there were probably other consequences to that later in the day once my mother got home. But there it was. I had learned something about obedience. I had learned the lesson of obeying, that obedience makes you happier than disobedience, which sometimes results in consequences. Now, I hadn't sinned by breaking a window because, hey, accidents happen, especially with kids. But my sin was in not immediately coming to my father, confessing what I'd done. And so I learned that sometimes the lessons of obedience are learned through the consequences of suffering. And I suffered. So with that in mind, I want to share with you the scripture that's in your flock note this morning, in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 31 to 33, where God basically says to Moses, I've given you all of the law, now I want you to give it to the people. And tell them to obey all of the commandments and statutes that I've given them, so that they may live and it may go well with them, and they may live long in the land that I've given them to possess. Now, there are two things there. There's the commandments that God gives, and there's a promise. Let's look at them separately. First of all, he tells them to walk in all of the statutes, all of the things that he's given them. That's the commandment. Now, there was a lot involved in that in the Ten Commandments and the law that would follow. And then there was a promise. And the promise is that you may live and that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land that God has given you to possess. So there's a promise. And even though God knew that the people of Israel would obey or not obey, because not only of the giving of the law, him revealing himself through the law, but also through their decision to either obey or disobey. And at the end of this passage, there is the reward. There's the carrot. If you obey, it will go well with you, and you will live long in the land that God has given you to possess. There's also the stick, and that is that if you don't obey, there will be punishment. It will not go well with you. You will not live long in the land that God has given you to possess. So, the question for Israel, the question for us this morning is, will it be the carrot or the stick? Which one? You know, it's good that I learned a lesson of obedience through disobedience, but isn't it much better that we pursue the promises of God so that it may go well with us? That we realize that obedience brings blessing and disobedience brings pain and suffering and consequences. We can learn through either, but wouldn't it be best if we learned obedience by pursuing the promises of God? So, have a wonderful Tuesday. God bless.